it's not just a question of money. Also, it's a big question of also offer proper financial knowledge and education. Because really at the end, I mean, you can leave $1 million and plus to your kids, but unless they really understand how to manage it, right? So as I said, it's not how much money you make, but how much you keep. That makes a difference. Same concept here. I always knew that I will be wealthy and I'll be able to make sure that I provide, some sort of legacy to my family. But now with IBC, I know exactly how I'm going to do it. And secondly, I know exactly how I'll be able to also share the knowledge to the next generation.
Well, Anthony and JP, thank you for joining us on the Infinite Banking Initiative. We want to start off by hearing how you discovered the infinite banking concept or becoming your own banker. Who discovered it first?
Well, I guess I have to go first.
Yeah.
Actually, I've always been a longtime student of Robert Kiyosaki. And it falls in line actually what Nelson Nash used to say about the arriving syndrome. Make sure you continue to rethink your thinking. And because I've been a student of Kiyosaki since 1997, one time he used to have Gary Guttenson as one of his webinar, and he was promoting his book, What Would Rockefeller Do? And if you read the book on page 32, who shows up? Nelson, right? Become your banker. And at the beginning, back in 2017, we were actually part of a different MGA, a different organization. It was more aligned towards, like say, agency building type of system. Towards about more building a business in the size, let's say, a business. But when we try to get more information about the infinite banking concept, it was really difficult for us because when we went to even our mutual company that we use here now, they wouldn't want to share any information about IBC. so for us, we had to find ways to do it. And because obviously I'm a guy who likes to do a lot of research. I mean, I'm pretty high on the fact finding, Kobe index. Yeah, exactly. So I read a lot of books. I asked Anthony, it's like every time maybe we will come up with a book, hey, have you read about this? Have you read about this? So we have to know more about this, right? So to a point where eventually back in 2020, we decided let's rotate, change how we do business. We really want to focus on IBC. And then, I even started policies on my family, and then the journey started.
For myself, I found it when actually I met JP. So in our previous company that we were with, that's where we met. But we had a presentation actually from one of the companies that was talking about this. It was actually a rep, not really the inside sales team, but it was a rep from the company that was captive. And he came to discuss this infinite banking concept. And we were like, this is interesting. But when you would ask the inside sales or the head office people, they would be like, oh, no, we're not going to talk about that. They'd have some other strategy that they talk about putting premiums in, premiums out, and something that's really not related to infinite banking. And then during COVID, as JP said, we pivoted and we talked about it, and we're like, we need to find out more about this. And since we had time during COVID, as everyone else did, we decided to research. And that's how we fell upon the Nelson Nash Institute. And actually, we fell upon Nelson's 10-hour seminar that we watched. And we found the Nelson Nash Institute. And we said, you know what? We were debating whether we should go towards financial planning certificates or infinite banking. And we said, you know what? Let's do infinite banking because it's more interesting. It's more aligned with what we want to do. And so that's what we did. We had our interview with David and Carlos Lara, and then here we are.
So what was your first thought, after reading Becoming Your Own Banker? What made you want to continue to pursue this?
Definitely something outside the box, right? So I think when you're reading this, you're like, how does this work? And even while I was reading it, I was asking Jay, I was like, well, how does that happen? And like, how come we never were shown this? And so what I found intriguing was how you're able to warehouse your wealth, right, inside these policies, and then use it to finance things in your life, right? And so it was just interesting. Like, you have to read it a few times, and as Nelson said, you can't learn this; you have to catch it. And it's really through doing the policy that you're able to catch it. Because even though you read the book and you get your first policy, if you don't actually do it, you really won't catch it. Because it's really a different shift, and you've been so used to thinking the way the industry tells you to do things, and putting it in these putting your money into registered accounts like 401ks in the US or RSPs here in Canada, that you can't really come out of that. It's about rates of returns and interest rates and so on and so forth. And then until you get your mind out of that and actually see what you're actually doing, then it actually clicks. And I think JP can add some color to that.
And I agree, because at the end of the day, it's really different compared to traditional knowledge or way that the industry wants us to teach our clients about money. And the more you step away and basically go to a path where not most people want to go, right? Because when you think about it, IBC is completely different from conventional wisdom when it comes to how to manage money. And for me, what it really hit home is when I started pay attention to page 17 about the problem, right? As I used to say, unless you understand the problem, the solution doesn't matter. And as you know, the solution usually in the industry is about focus on what you do actually with the 5 or 10% you put aside every month, right? Do I put to RSP? Do I put TSFA? Do I start a business? Do I invest into real estate? Then it comes to the question of, okay, so what's the rate of return, right? What's the rate of return? But what I really understood from Nelson Nash, obviously, is that obviously it's not what you buy, but how you finance that makes a difference. And even if you were to give an example of someone, let's say that's making $100,000, right? And let's say in this example, he's putting 5% aside. So he's really basically putting $5,000 a year aside in terms of saving. Well, if to the best of knowledge, if you generate 10% on that $5,000, it's only $500 of interest that he earns, right? But meanwhile, you have to pay attention to what's going on the other side, which is the guy is spending $95,000 a year, right? And as Nelson said, 34% goes towards interest you pay to finance the things in your life. So if you start to focus on, let's say, just to capture, let's say 1% of that $95,000, that's already $950. Well, a good $950 is more than $500. And that's just 1%. Imagine you start basically take 10%, recapture 10% of the financing portion of your life. So it takes almost like 19 years basically to generate the same amount of money that you would try to save. And that's why I love what Nelson says. It's not basically in question rate of return unless you control the financing of your life.
Recapturing is a key word. And that's probably the most misunderstood aspect of the infinite banking concept is like, what does that mean? Recapturing? Am I earning interest on the things I finance? Well, no, but you're recapturing that cash flow in a system that you own. That's why the book's called Becoming Your Own Bank, or Not Becoming Your Own Bank, because you have to understand how to act like a banker and maintain that cash flow balance within your system of policies. And it's also forces you to save. It forces you to, because you've got obligations to pay premiums. So,
well, it's discipline, right? It's beating Parkinson's law, as Nelson talked about. Unless you're able to put the money aside, capitalize the system, just like a banker doing essentially, then it's not going to happen, right? So people have to focus on, just like you want to take money out of your saving account, you have to save first.
And since it's always focused on, I like to call it the smoke and mirrors, and it's the interest rate and your rate of return, because people don't want to focus on savings. They're looking at trying to get that rate of return, like where can I get my biggest bang for my buck? But once you realize that bang for your buck really starts with saving and creating a foundation to your financial house, let's call it, then you realize it. But because we're so trained into that rate of return that people are looking for that 10% rate of return on the S&P 500, that people forget about everything else.
Yeah. You're right about that. So you guys are in Quebec.
Yes, we are.
La belle province.
I don't want to get into any political things here, but it's like, I guess Quebec considers themselves almost separatist from the rest of Canada because you're French Canadian, right? So do you see any difference in the French Canadian perspective on learning this, understanding this, and accepting it versus the rest of Canada?
Well, I would say, first of all, if there's any Québécois that are following us, bonjour et bienvenue au podcast, et on espère que vous avez de bonnes informations aujourd'hui. But how can I say this? I think that in general, everybody across North America has the same intentions. I think the difficulty is that in Quebec, most of the stuff that's available to people is in English. And whether we like it or not, the world, everything, if you want information, most of the information in the world is in English. And so I think one of the challenges that most people will have in Quebec is that nothing is available in French. And so if they want to learn that, they're either going to have to learn English or find somebody that's able to translate that for them so that they can understand it. And I think that's one of the things that me and JP wanted to focus on, is that since all of the documentation, all the podcasts, all the books are English, we feel that, we can translate and help people understand it in their native language. Because whether we like it or not, like, I speak almost 4 languages, and my native language, I'll say, is English, even though I was born in Montreal, Quebec. I was part of the Anglophone side, and I'll say that my thought process is in English. And so when I learn better in English than I learn in any other language that I know. Now, it's not to say that I don't understand or I can't write or I can't speak it, but definitely as a French Canadian, if my first language is French, I'll probably be easier to learn something that is a new concept in my native language. So it's really important that we're able to provide that for them so that they can understand it. They can find the other stuff by coaching and from us coaching them. So I think that's the key difference for French Canadians.
Well, it all comes out to make sure they don't get lost in translation, as we say, right? So for them, is first of all, is understand, okay, this reminds me of what Simon Sinek talked about. We talked about the mentality of the herd, right? Where eventually people have to say, okay, it's easier for them to just do what everyone's are doing. And then once they stumble into a new information, they're not quite sure, who to turn to validate some of, the knowledge they just acquire. So because they might want to do additional research and the information always available in French, then that's why he said, listen, talk to us. We're practitioners. We went to the same route as you did. We all has the same, misconception, about IBC like everybody else did. Because keep in mind, we were in the industry before as well when we started IBC. I was in the industry in 2010, Anthony's in 2015. And as I say, IBC is about the mind shift, right? So if you have any question, you're not sure, we're here to help, and it's funny because the same way that Nelson used to say, I used to do a 10-hour seminar because I couldn't do it in 2 hours. Well, guess what? We're doing the same thing. So we're doing almost like a 10-hour seminar in French, but so we do it in 5, in fractions, where we make sure that we talk about all the different aspects, that the book covers. And it all comes out to what Nelson said also about the human nature, right? That's one aspect that people have to, I think that's the biggest thing that, we're trying to change people's mentality when it comes to how do I take new information in and able to dissect in a way that it makes sense. And I'm okay to say, hey, I just learned something new, but the thing that most people do is that they ask someone that doesn't know about it and ask their opinion about it. Well, guess what? It's like they're not going to get a good answer. So so that's why we always say it's important for us to make sure that we have the information in French. We have obviously the Infinite Banking Bible in French as well. So at least they have a reference to refer to, and who else better than Nelson to teach them about the concept?
Yeah. So I guess I do a paid political announcement here. We do have a draft version of Become Your Own Banker in French, translated by a French Canadian. So I guess there's a difference between pure French and French Canadian. So that will be available for anybody who wants to purchase it. I'm just in the final stages of getting it formatted and copy edited and whatever.
Well, we'll definitely be happy to distribute it and make sure everyone gets a copy of it. Our client will wait for it.
You're talking about using the 10-hour seminar. You're probably using 6 hours, and the French translation makes it 10, right?
You're absolutely right on this. Now you understand why they said the French people speak a lot, because it takes more work to convey the same idea.
Well, I'm a former military guy, and I'm a Napoleonic fan. So there you go. And I actually, when I was driving to work, I was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and we lived in Hopkinsville. It was about a 30-minute drive back and forth. So I went to the library at Fort Campbell. I got some audio tapes on learning French. And so I listened to them in the little car cassette, driving in. trying to teach myself French. So I could, like, when I read Napoleonic history, I could speak, I could talk, correctly with the names and whatnot. Well, it lasted about 2 days. And it's like, that has got to be the hardest language for pronunciation on the planet, man. That's all I can say.
Well, JP and Anthony, tell us about the two of you. How did y'all meet each other? How did you start working together?
So when we were working for a former MGA, we actually crossed our path at a convention that happened in Las Vegas. And we're only a few leaders of us, in the company. And we had a chance to obviously, create a great bond. I mean, Anthony and I actually happened to be very close also, after that incident or that event. And, there was just a chemistry, right? I mean, obviously opposite attract. I'm the introvert, he's the extrovert, but at the same time too, we all want to focus on one thing, which means we provide the right financial education to a client. So, I guess working together became natural for us, right? So it's, because we have so much complementary skills. Anyone add anything?
Yeah, of course. That's how we met. And, it was funny when we had gone to Vegas, we didn't know that we were going to be there together, and we just met, and we went out, we hung out, and then when we came back, we continued to hang out. And then during COVID, that bond got stronger because, I was alone. Obviously, I don't know if you knew how it was in Quebec, but they really locked down. We had curfews, and so being alone, you had to connect with friends, and so with JP, we connected well, and that's how we started brainstorming about getting into IBC together. And we said, let's open our own firm, because we really wanted to create a niche, and we wanted our brand to be us that creates it, and not have anybody else hang over, and can change that for us. Because when you work for other companies, sometimes you just need one person to ruin it for you, and then your reputation goes down. So it's better to have our own, so that if something goes wrong, it's our own fault and not anybody else's. So that's how we decided to get together and really focus on IBC.
Well, and what is something that you wish that you know now that you wish you would have known when you guys started working together?
Well, I guess especially back in 2017, I wish I had contacted you guys earlier.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I could have gone to meet you guys at a think tank in 2017, meet Nelson as well. And I think it would obviously shorten the length it took us to really digest the concept, only because already in Quebec, there wasn't a lot of practitioners at that time too. So again, it was just a question that I got access to the information. But one thing I can tell you that maybe, or even our financial, not the situation, I would say, maybe even our financial career would have been completely different if we actually probably have known since the beginning. Because I think it's a question of, once you really understand what's going on in the financial industry, and I guess the system that we were part of originally, I mean, it's great for business. I mean, they talk about, because the idea obviously is, okay, you put some money aside, you control cash flow, and then use the cash flow to make passive income. But we couldn't go along with the idea, continue to talk to a client about the typical financial, buy the RSP, max it out, CSFAs, and, buy term, invest the difference. It didn't make sense to us anymore. It just didn't make sense. So we had to really be strong-headed and say, we're not going to continue to go at that path, even though that path could be lucrative financially. We want to focus on doing the right thing for a client, and knowing that, yes, we do provide actually the best information available in the industry. Because let's face it, I mean, in Quebec, there's about 34,000 life agents. And if we're only 11th IBC practitioner in Quebec. That makes us, that means that 99.96 people are different than us, okay, in the way that we think, right? So it's, but it's beautiful. It's amazing. I mean, we're definitely fortunate, and we're happy actually that we're, through obviously the help of the Institute, to have a chance to discover that information, this concept. And we're ever going to be grateful actually for Nelson to at least, put the information in the world.
Yeah. I think what I would have changed, on my side, definitely, I would have changed the way I did my finances. We knew that there was something that wasn't working, and I would have loved to known this before, so that I could have protected my family. Now we're if we would have done this in 2017 when we met and we started talking about it, we started learning about it, we could have probably started implementing it then and already be almost 10 years in, but we're like 7 years in there. So it would have been nice to change that. And also the fact that, we could have helped other people change their lives. Because like JP said, we were focused on the way the industry does things, and RSPs and TFSAs is basically the 401k in the US and the Roth IRA. So it's the same thing, but same type of policy. But I have clients that I was working with, being in the industry for so long, that were doing that, and they're doing everything right. And yet when we're looking at their annual review, we see that nothing really changes much. And you're wondering why. And I think it's because, access to your cash during your lifetime is more important than having a 401k or an RSP, right? Because I need to buy things in my lifetime. I need to invest for my children's education. But if my money is locked up in these registered accounts and I can't touch it, well, obviously that's why people can't save, because they don't want to save because they're too scared that they need the money to live. And so if you can have a vehicle like this where I can save my money, it's my warehouse, it's my safe where I can start saving and then use it towards my lifestyle during my living and finance the things that I need to do, and not affect my return, because that's the issue, is that it's the constant compounding. That's the key. And I think if that would have been done years sooner, that would have been so much better. But hey, you have a path in life. Somebody has a bigger vision or a bigger reason for you to be here. And so we're here now, and we're happy to be a part of the Nelson Nash Institute.
Well, better to start today than start tomorrow, right?
That's right.
So you're way ahead in that regard.
Yeah, but we had a chance to catch up. That's the good news. We did catch up actually on our knowledge, and personally, I mean, my entire family is covered, right? So I'm taking care of, my daughter's taking care of, my son-in-law's taking care of. I mean, we also have 3 grandchildren. The last one's we're going to buy a policy on the last one. So technically, I mean, we're already ready actually for the next generation, right? So I'm definitely happy that at least, knowing that it's not just a question of money. Also, it's going to be a question of also offer proper financial knowledge and education, because really at the end, I mean, you can live $1 million and plus, to your kids, but unless they really understand how to manage it, right? So as I said, it's not how much money you make, but how much you keep that makes a difference. Same concept here. You don't want to be part of the statistic actually where all the money is gone after the 3rd generation. So at least we're keeping the money within the family, as Rockefeller used to say.
The generation needs to take responsibility. They need to understand, be responsible, and stick with the concept. Otherwise, it's all for naught, right?
Well, when you first started introducing this infinite banking concept to your clients who were so used to the traditional, thinking in finance, how did you go about that? Knowing all that you guys knew traditionally and saying that here's this brand new thing, or new thing to you, client, and let us tell you about it. How did you overcome some of those challenges of introducing something to them?
Well, I guess I can start with that, but it's difficult. It's difficult because people have a closed mind to that. And I think at the think tank this year, I forget who said it. I think it was James. He was talking about a tractor running along a fence, day in and day out for years. And the tractor creates tire ruts, right? The ruts. And to get those tires out is hard. And people just don't see it because they need, like JP said originally, was if you don't understand what the problem is, it doesn't matter what the solution is because you're not going to want to change it. So they need to understand what the problem is. But understanding that is difficult because they're so used to thinking about, okay, if I need money, I'm going to borrow it, or I'll save it and then I'll withdraw it. But that's the issue. Because when you're borrowing money, you're paying interest. And when you're saving money and you're earning interest and then you use it, well, then you lose the opportunity to make the interest. So it was really trying to get over that hump. And then the other thing is that when you talk about the concept, people right away run into what? They want the numbers. Why do they want the numbers? Because they're used to that, because the industry talks to them about rates of return. What's my rate of return? What is the interest rate when I borrow money? And why do I have to borrow money from my money? That's my money. And so trying to get them around those things is navigating. So again, it's something that they have to catch. So it's constant education, constant educating them, trying to get them out of the rut of thinking about rates of return and interest rates, and getting them out of thinking about the policy, because we're not selling you a policy. It's a concept. And if they understand what the concept is, then it doesn't matter what the policy is, because it's a tool. And if you don't understand how the tool works, if you don't understand the concept, then the tool doesn't matter. So again, it comes down to that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because there's so many companies in Quebec also that are trying to, use IBC as a sell tool. And it's funny because page 3, Nelson Nash says it's not a tool for life insurance agents. And that's why we're seeing that right now, because IBC being our infinite banking being the buzzword now, we're seeing so many different companies actually try to promote that concept. Well, meanwhile, they're promoting the product, not even the concept. And it's funny, interesting, because Anthony and I actually had a podcast also with 2 other fellow actually practitioners in Quebec, with John and Simon. And we had a chance to talk about it, how so many people right now in Quebec are literally bastardizing IBC because they think it's, again, they use it as a sell tool, and we have to tell them, no, it's not the case. They're voices that are giving the worst information to the clients. That's why we kept on telling them, listen, you need to deal only and only with IBC practitioner from Nelson Nash Institute, because we understand the tool. But again, it's not about the tool, right? What we're trying to do here, we're trying to build a new business. It's your own private banking system. And there's a ways you have to go about. And I love also the idea that Nelson introduced the grocery store example in this book, because again, it comes out to the Parkinson's law about how to, use it or lose it, or also how exactly I'm going to manage and make sure I don't steal the peas, right, when I borrow money from my own system. So there's many, subtleties actually in the book that unless you spend the time to really study it and understand it, then you'll jump over it, right? You'll say, well, why does it talk about grocery store? Well, what does that mean? Like, and I'm sure that David had the same example originally, the same feeling, but so it took time for us to really say, you know what, like, let's do a proper presentation. Let's cover a certain chapter of the book, So, and I think, it's funny because it goes to almost the story that Nelson used to say, where, it's like a mosquito in a nudist camp, I know what to do. I don't know what to start. Right? So we knew what to do. I talk about the book, talk about the chapter, talk about the human condition, talk about, the problem. But then how do we convey the information in a way that people can accept it and understand it? And I think maybe it's our own fault, because maybe me, especially I tend to maybe, not say I will overcomplicating things, but I like to provide a lot of information. We had to learn to do a presentation where it would be simple, where it had to be like, easy to digest. We have to go piece by piece, right? Not try to show too much illustration. Well, no, actually wouldn't show any illustration, but not trying to show like even too much numbers, because they have to, again, use the imagination when it comes to how do I build my own bank, first of all, right? How does that work?
We had a conversation with a practitioner's candidate recently, and it was a formal interview, but he also, he's a financial guy, he's an insurance agent, but he's also owns a coffee shop, right? And so whenever he meets a prospect or a client, he meets them in his coffee shop, and they have different meetings there, and he always pays for the coffee and whatnot with his credit card. Boom, boom, boom. And he owns the coffee shop. And so, he's just telling us how it works. And anyway, he said, I had one client that did not understand IBC. And you talked about, borrowing from yourself, paying yourself interest. Why should I borrow my money? Whatever. Long story short is, this prospect went home that night and was going through Nelson's book, and he read the grocery store again. And then they remembered that this practitioner candidate was paying for the coffee in a place he owned, right? And all of a sudden, boom, the light went on, and it's like, he doesn't have to pay for it because he owns the shop. But number one, he is providing revenue to the operation. Okay. And yeah, he's coming out of his credit card account, but he's growing his store. Number one, plus the what Nelson talked about Willie Sutton. The employees are watching him time after time, day after day. And so guess what they're not going to do? They're not going to go out the back door. Yeah. But that one little story, not only did it resonate, the grocery store, chapter out of Nelson's book, but it just flipped the switch on that prospect. And all of a sudden he understood what this is really all about.
Well, Anthony and JP, y'all mentioned about, being authorized infinite banking concept practitioners. Why did you decide to go through that process? Why was that important to you?
I started to do policy on my grandkids back in 2021, and one thing we were not practitioner yet, but I mean we understood the tool, but we're not we didn't understood IBCI itself. And as we started designing the policy, we started looking to it and say, okay, so the back in our minds, are we actually doing things properly, right? Are we actually designed the way that was Nelson intended to do in the first place? Because again, if you focus mostly just on the life insurance itself, okay, that's one thing. But as you know, IBC is not the policy. IBC is a system and how you use it, how you borrow against it. So that's we can about say, okay, make sure. I think it's better for us to go to institute, make sure that we actually do the right thing, the right way, and then we can actually also communicate the message evenly also to our clients. So because first, I mean, we are customer-owned shop also. so it's not something actually that we want to just give our clients. It's something that we practice also as practitioners. So we want to make sure that we do the right thing for ourselves, for our family, for the next generation, and then also we teach it also to our clients. So that's why for us it was essential that we make sure that we're basically properly trained when it comes to design and also utilize the tool properly.
Yeah. And it comes down to if you're going to go see a doctor, if you're going to go see an accountant, you obviously want them to be certified, right? And know that they have a document that says, yeah, I studied and I know what it is. And so that was one of the things, like Jay was saying, is to really know how to do it and to give the right information. And I think that's the key. Because the tool is the tool, and I think anybody can reproduce the tool, but the concept, people need to understand it. And I think from the experience, and what I want to add to this is that I think it was the best decision we ever made to join the Nelson Nash Institute, not only for that, but because we learned how to do it, but the camaraderie that we have as infinite banking practitioners together. And like JP said yesterday, we met with two of the practitioners, Simon and John, and we did a podcast together. And we don't work together. You can probably say we're competitors, but we're not, because we want to spread the word and engage each other. Listen, there's 8 million people in Quebec. We have plenty of room to share in the numbers. And I think the camaraderie and the level of education you get, especially going to think tanks, and eventually I do want to come. We both want to come to the coaching academy. Yes. I almost lost that. I had it in my head and I was like, where's the word? But the coaching academy. And listen, we've been in Nelson Nash practitioners for almost 2 years now, going on 3. And still, you're never end learning about how to use it. So I think it's crucial if people that we join it.
Yeah, the way I look at it also, obviously, being part of the institution is obviously, my lifeblood, but I just want to provide the public with a resource where they can feel comfortable that who they're talking to has, not only been trained, but also they're contractually obligated to do the right thing by the clients, right? And because, there's so much out there. I'm not going to disparage any insurance products, okay, because there's a need for, a product for any specific circumstance. But, I say this over and over again, but if you want to implement the concept, the infinite banking concept, then this is the only way to do it. Okay. So that's what I tell the public, because we have so many horror stories, like a year, 2, 3, 4 years later, it's like, oh my God, this is what happened to me. And it's like, well, who'd you use? Somebody I never heard of. Well, hey, they had a good sales pitch, I guess.
Well, I got a story about this, David, because a friend of mine that also had implemented IBC, for himself, through another agent, one day could contact me and say, listen, I says, I have one of those policies, but, I'm not sure it's actually properly designed. Okay, let them bring it to me. I'll take a look. And again, it was designed exactly the way the industry designed, typical life insurance, right? So we had to find ways to almost like undo a year basically of premium, and it's difficult. And sometimes those policies cannot be salvaged. So, I mean,
in that case,
it's unfortunate for the client.
Yeah. In that case, we couldn't salvage it, remember?
Exactly. So we had to restart a new policy because fortunately, the way it was designed, it was just, there's nothing we could do about it, right? But the good news is through proper design, I mean, we were able almost to recuperate within 2 years, let's say, the lost opportunity, that that basically had with the old policy. So that's why it's so key. I mean, and for those our fellow that are in industry, in the life insurance industry, I would say, if you really want, promote IBC, come to the institute, get authorized, understand that IBC is basically backed by Austrian economics, understand what that is, understand that, we're not creating inflation whenever we're borrowing money, from the insurance company to finance the things in our life. So these are all the small details that people understand. Plus, in Canada, a policy only works differently compared to the US, right? So that's another layer actually of complexity that you can create to your client if you understand how the tools work, right? So that's why I would say, I mean, we encourage people to learn about IBC, but please, if you're in the life insurance space and you're not sure about IBC, do your research. At least read the book, contact the industry, contact Nelson Nash Institute, and talk to us. We'll be more happy to show you and what we're doing exactly, because it's not about by term insurance difference, right?
Can you share any ways that IBC has changed your clients' lives? I know you're still relatively new in this space, but do you have any stories about that?
Well, I do have a few. I remember I had a client actually that he currently is in the real estate space. He actually manages a managing real estate company. Plus, his family do own real estate as well. And when I met the fella, he used to say, "Listen, it says as a family, we have good financial education. So I'm not sure what IBC can do for me, but I'm still curious to know how it works." And when we actually spend some time to really explain, how things works and, make sure that he understands the concept behind, even behind the numbers and everything else, I think the best thing that he probably say to us after is, listen, I always knew that I will be wealthy and I'll be able to, make sure that I provide, some sort of legacy to my family. But now with IBC, I know exactly, how I'm going to do it. And secondly, I know exactly how I'll be able to also share the knowledge to the next generation. And say, I'm so happy you guys are here. And obviously he was, because obviously he gave us a lot of referrals, but it makes a big difference. And if I can add maybe to a second story, I had a gentleman also, a family, good income and everything else, but they were not saving enough money, compared to in ratio to the income. They were maybe saving about 3% of the income, although, he could have done more. But traditionally, because sometimes if you don't manage your money properly, if you don't really understand cash flow, then sometimes you get stuck, paying a lot of interest. So we find ways to use strategies where we can actually reduce, the interest that we're paying, and to a point where we literally went from, let's say, saving $500 a month to saving $2,500 a month, right? And automatically now that money is basically residing into where? His system, the family banking system. So the entire family is covered. Now, as opposed to saving, let's say, $500 a month, they're saving $2,500 a month. So it's close to almost like 16% of their income. So more importantly, now they have capital available when they choose, when they need it, to continue to finance the things in their life. So I think it's just an example. And obviously we have many of those examples, but it's just to show the power of, using things properly and be able to control your capital.
I can talk about myself, right? We know we're talking about client experiences, but how about an infinite banking practitioner? How does it work for us? And what I can tell you is that when I started in it, I created a policy because as an entrepreneur, right, we all have expenses and taxes to pay. I don't know how it works in the US, but in Canada, at the end of the year, at the end of the fiscal year, we have to pay our income taxes. And so what I used to do is I used to take my taxes as a responsible person and put it into a savings account with high interest so that I'd be able to pay off my taxes at the end of the year. But guess what? At the end of the year, when the government came and asked me for my taxes, I would withdraw the money, and how much money was left in my account? Zero. Exactly. So I had to start all over again. So what I did is I started the policy, and I put more than actually what I would put in taxes in the policy. And then when the time came to pay my taxes, I would take a loan from my policy to pay the taxes. And then with the next year's income, I would take the savings and pay off my policy loan. And so now when the end of the year came back, not only did I have no more loan, but I also had more money in my policy. And so as business owners, not only do we have to pay income taxes, but we also have expenses. So now I even have extra money, not only to pay the government again, but also to finance things in the business. So it really opens up your eyes when you get to practice this for yourself. And so we need to know how that works. And so by doing it ourselves, we definitely know how that works. And we can show people how to do that.
Absolutely. Well, JP and Anthony, as we wrap up this episode with you, we always like to ask, what does the infinite banking concept mean to you?
Well, from my side, I would say it's about controlling your wealth, right? It's about being more efficient with your money. And really, basically, for us, is about control. It's so important for us. And it's why we decided to call a company Control Your Wealth, because it really, on the infinite banking concept is all about you be actually the driver's seat when it comes to your own, money. So we believe that.
Yeah. And for myself, what it means is it's the warehouse. Throughout the years of being in the financial industry, I feel that people have been misguided, I would say. I'm not saying that everything is wrong, but I think that it's a place where you can now feel safe to put money aside for the things that you need and learn how to finance, learn how to become the banker and grow your wealth, but also be able to teach your family, your children, or whoever you have around you how this works, and then even leave a legacy. I think it's really the legacy that it leaves for people that they'll only realize when they're going to have that picture on the mantle saying, do you remember Uncle Anthony? Well, that guy, he's the one who taught us that. And I think that's what infinite banking means to me, is that it's really going to be a legacy and a place to warehouse your wealth that's not the traditional place.
Yeah, those are outstanding answers. I think you both captured the whole picture, and I didn't hear you talk about policy design one time. That's good.
Yeah.
It's not about design.
It's not. It's not.